Ready?
Yes.
All right. Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is a very special episode. I'm here with Luthiers. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Okay. Luthiers, Oland Boles and Corey Eller. And co-host today is Mike Krock. He's my right hand man.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah. You might remember Mike from the Falconry podcast, and so we're going to be talking about guitars. And since Mike plays and I knew nothing about them, I'm like, he might have some better questions than me. So guys, thanks for coming on. And we just got done looking at. Hi, pup.
And the inclusion of my dog.
We just got done looking at some of the guitars that you guys have built, and I still can't get over that these were built in someone's home workshop. They're some of the most beautiful guitars I've ever seen. It's incredible. The curves on the one that Corey built I can't even fathom how you did that, to be honest.
Lots of work, lots of practice.
Right. That's I guess. It's good for people to know it doesn't come easy. It
does not come easy.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to get to where you end up with an instrument that you are proud of.
Yeah.
I botched probably the first 50 guitars I built.
Did you really?
Oh, absolutely.
I guess you have to have a certain desire to be a perfectionist, right?
I think there's definitely a certain level of perfectionism that goes with it, because you want something that someone's going to want to have and keep and maybe even be an heirloom. And if you're really conscious of what you're building, you want it to be something that's going to carry your name well.
Yeah.
And because you don't want someone to get a guitar and not play it, or tell 10 people never buy a guitar from this guy because it's total crap. So there's certain there is a weight to it. Yeah,
well, and I guess you don't want it to, like I remarked that these don't look homemade, and I guess you that's what you're going for. You don't want it to look like someone built it in their home. You want it to look like a guitar that you would walk in any music store and find, and
absolutely.
A high-end music store at that.
Yeah, absolutely. When you build an instrument, you want it to look like it came off from a Martin factory or from a Taylor factory,
yeah.
or better, because I mean, honestly, I guess we would be considered boutique makers. Not even, maybe even, I don't know, not even to that level, but the fact that there are a lot of big guitar maker names out there that don't make quality products, and so people actually seek out guys like me and Corey because they want something that they can customize, or they can put the electronics in that they want. There's a number of features that that people want that they can't necessarily get from going to a store where they can buy an instrument off the wall.
And I will say that not only did they not look homemade, but they did look way more impressive than anything I've ever seen in a music store. Mike,
the fit and finish is incredible, and I mean, and I think that is they are boutique shops. Yeah. Type guitars, and if you go to like a local music store or something like that, and you find guitars that are, they're relatively expensive for the normal person, but you can go to someone like Corey or Laney, and find a much better quality instrument for about the same money. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it really is. I'm just still shocked, really blown away by the level of quality, the design, and just beautiful, perfect-looking instruments. And I think it's important for people to know. It's kind of one of the reasons why I like doing this podcast. That these are guys that live right here in the High Valley. You don't have to go to all the way to California or New York to find people that are doing extremely high-level work. And I kind of related to making films. That, when I make a movie, thing I say to myself all the time: God, don't make it look like it was homemade, in your backyard. And but you guys are like doing Tarantino level stuff here in Willing. My stuff, it's always it would never pass for the big screen. Although I did see a preview of one that Jeff Madzai's working on that it reminded me of an episode of The Twilight Zone, and kudos to him because he's hit the next level with his filmmaking technique. But
I mean, the thing I find interesting about luthiers and building instruments like this is, it's like James builds or makes films and stuff like that, but you don't build the camera,
right?
So you have an artistic ability to play the instrument, but to build your own instrument is its art form in itself, and at the level that you guys are doing, it's incredible. So
well, I have to say that I'm still on the learning curve into it. I'm in the process of making like my 5th from scratch guitar, but Corey, you've made a couple hundred probably.
Yeah, a few hundred guitars. Yeah. I've been doing it since I was I think 15 years old. I built my first guitar.
Wow.
So it's and like I said, the first few instruments you will unless you're really 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 lucky, you will have major flaws in your first instruments if you do try to build. It's just a fact of life.
So what made you decide at 15 that you wanted to try to build a guitar?
Well, it was kind of funny. I was back in the day, Bon Jovi had a video, Wanted Dead or Alive.
Yeah.
Richie Sambora comes out with a double neck acoustic guitar. Like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So I'm 15 years old. I'm like, wow, I want one of those. And I was like, you can't find them.
Right.
Custom made. So I needed a shop project for high school.
Oh, okay.
So I told my instructor, I'm like, look, I want to build a guitar. He's like, you're on your own. He's like, you're on your own.
I can't coach you through that.
He's like, I don't have any idea how to do that.
Birdhouses I'm good at. Guitars, forget it.
Exactly. He's like, curio cabinets, I can do that. He's like, so when my art teacher happened to have a couple of old books on guitar making, and he's like, hey, you can borrow these books and read these books and figure out really, really just old school Irving Sloan classic guitar construction book. I mean, anybody who's ever tried to build guitar has seen this book. So I built this guitar, double neck acoustic guitar.
Your first guitar was a double neck acoustic guitar.
Yeah, why not just
not too
ambitious?
Aim high next time.
Yeah. I
Pick something hard.
Well, it was cool. I mean, some of the things I did with it I won't get into because it was like the construction techniques were like all wrong. It was like built wrong. It was a piece of trash. But I got sent to the West Virginia Student Craftsman's Fair in Ripley, West Virginia, and I won the whole show.
Wow.
So I won grand prize for student craftsman. So I think this is like, actually it ended up being my senior year because I built my first couple guitars were electrics, and then this was my first acoustic. And somebody stole it from the competition.
No.
So I went down to the award ceremony and no guitar, So I'm heartbroken, of course.
Oh.
But just I think that's what's kind of shaped my whole life because I'm like, okay, somebody stole this piece of trash that I built. Somebody wanted this piece of garbage.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, kind of refocused where I was going to go with my career. So I was like, well, if that piece of trash somebody wanted, maybe I should go to school and learn to build guitars for real.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I signed up shortly after there went to a place called Talmadge Instruments in Saskatchewan, Canada. So as soon as I graduated high school, I went up to Saskatchewan and started a guitar building seminar.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, how long was that?
It was 2 months, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Wow.
Sometimes you're in the shop longer than that. My instructor, David Freeman, he's still building guitars. He's kind of world-renowned, neat guy. Neat experience, when the town was so small. When the students were there was 107 people there. The nearest town was like Moose Jaw and Eyebrow, so it's like, you're in the middle of like desolate prairie land Canada.
That's funny.
But it was a neat experience.
Yeah. So you kind of knew early on that you fell in love with the process and that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of get hooked.
Yeah.
And it's the materials you use, and then you're using like exotic woods, different rosewoods and different spruces and woods that normal woodworkers don't usually work with.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that whole aspect of that. And then I was talking to Lanny before you guys came. As a guitar maker, you work in so many different medias.
Yeah.
I use stone in my guitars for the inlay.
Oh wow.
I use cowbone for the nuts and for the saddles. You're doing metal work for the frets. You're working on finishes. You're doing you're doing so many different medias when you're building a guitar. You're like touching base with pretty much every form of fine woodworking.
Yeah.
So to me, that was always kind of cool because you're doing that all rolled into one particular medium, but you're touching all these different places.
And then it's going to sound good.
It has to sound good. The physics comes involved because I do a lot of physical testing on my instruments. I do Chladni patterns. I do deflection testing for the braces, and there's a bunch of stuff that have to do with science that you're doing. That it's not just art; it's art and science.
Yeah, because if you're building a chair, as long as it doesn't rock back and forth and it doesn't crumble when something heavy sits on it, you're successful. But even if it wasn't pretty, it still would have to sound good. But you kind of have to hit all those marks all at once.
Exactly, and to me, like sound to me is kind of I don't know. Everybody hears different. So I may build 5 guitars, and I've built 2 guitars exactly the same before. Same bracing patterns, I've deflected, tested all the braces exactly the same soundboards cut from the same flitch, the same back and sides cut from the same flitch. So it was close to being the same instrument as you possibly could do it. They sound like night and day.
Really?
I mean, the tonal color was the same, the timbre was the same, but the different frequencies were it was crazy. One was real mellow and one was very bright.
Wow.
But everything was, as far as like the note I tuned it to was the same and everything.
So when we were at dinner the other night, you were explaining how that I only remember part of it, but about how it's in between the note or something like that. How you might remember.
He said you were doing frequency testing of the like taking the top and getting it tuned to A, or then matching it with a body that's.
Well, it's essentially you don't want it to match.
You don't want it to match.
Yeah, there was a guy named Lloyd Lohr who was a Gibson maker back in the day. Lloyd Lohr mandolins. Remember the F-style mandolin?
Yeah.
What he did is he used a tuning scale of C235, and I hope I'm correct on that, but I think it was C235. So
most of my listeners won't fact check it.
Well, there's someone out there going,
no, that wasn't right, but I think that's what it was.
When you build a guitar like this guy, you can check his facts. Anyhow.
But standard musical pitch is A440, is a concert A. Now, in standard musical pitch, if you're using C235, A does not match 440. It's somewhere lower or higher. I can't remember exactly where it's at. But essentially what you do, when I tune a guitar top, I tune it on the C235 scale, so it's off pitch. So if I make the top, like say an A in 235, and the back a G or a C in 235, they work against each other whenever you're strumming it. So you're eliminating hot spots. Most guitars from a factory, Martins are known to have a G note is louder than every other note on a Martin Dreadnought. A smaller body guitar, like a classical guitar, usually around an A, it's a higher pitch. That is a hot spot. What I try to do is tune my place to different pitches so they work against each other. Now you still have the sound hole factor because it's called mass air resonance, and you're always going to have a certain note that is going to favor because of that. But this helps with that. It helps eliminate that, what's called a wolf note. It's louder than every other note.
Really? I didn't know that there was such a thing.
Yeah, when he was talking about the other night dinner, I hadn't heard that before.
And that's just because the string with that particular note resonates more with the guitar.
Exactly. It pumps more air. All you're doing is pumping air. A guitar is just a big air pump. That's what you're doing. That's why like the guitar downstairs that has 3 sound holes in it.
Yeah.
That's the idea behind it, is to eliminate that one particular note. So you have different frequencies that the guitar body should favor. And it works to a point. I think a guitar with a sound hole in the center sounds better than a guitar with 3 sound holes, but a guitar with 3 sound holes seems to be more balanced.
Yeah.
It seems to record better. So it just...
the trade-off.
Exactly. It's what you're looking for. It's whatever somebody's looking for. And it goes back to what I said before, is everybody hears different.
Yeah.
So my guitar might work for one person and not work for somebody else for that reason.
Wow.
When I first started getting into guitars and stuff, I would go to the local music store and stuff, and the salesman I remember they were looking at this one PRS, and it was an electric guitar, and I can't remember if it was like a Dragon inlay PRS guitar, and they all kept pointing out, it's like, this guitar has it, and that was one of my questions for you guys was, have you ever built a guitar and it's just been like a dud? So you just like, well, this isn't going to work. And you kind of, alluded to the fact that you built something that
it's
just
in the basement right now. It was a dud until I put that hole in the side.
And that
sounded
brought it to life.
Awful. Yeah, absolutely. There's always ways you can improve an instrument to make it not to be a dud, but it comes with experience and time. You can take a $100 Strat, what do you call those, Squires, from CA House, electric guitar, and if you put it in the hand of a good luthier, they can make a crappy guitar into a decent playing instrument. Just, it's not that hard to do once you know what you're doing.
Yeah, and I guess
I'm saying, fortunately for me, since I build electric guitars and they're solid body, it's more about the feel than, because you don't necessarily have that resonant frequency / acoustic thing that you're really worried about. I mean, you want an electric guitar to ring out acoustically, but it's a matter of pickups and how well the guitar is set up. So I've got a lot less factors to deal with.
Yeah, well, with cheap acoustics, mostly they'll sound decent, but you're never going to get to the high level of a handmade instrument, in my opinion. There'll always be a frequency that will bother you in some way, shape, or form, just because they don't go to the levels that I go to whenever I try to build an instrument. Every brace that I make, I hang a weight off of, and I make a notation of how much it deflects. So I only select the stiffer woods for my tops. Mm-hmm. So the looser woods I'll use on the back, because I'm trying to make a guitar that's light and stiff, and that creates a much better vibrating plate if it's light and stiff, and you can make the braces thinner because it's stiffer, so you're reducing the weight. So in the factory, they're not doing that.
Right.
Even the Martin factory, where they are carving braces by hand, they're picking up and they're tapping and they'll listen to the resonant frequency, but they're just getting a certain thud, and they're moving on. I'm doing a little bit more than that. I actually do what's called chladdy patterns on my tops, which is kind of like some luthiers think it's like, doesn't really work, but it seems to work for me. So what I'll do is I'll take a guitar top and I'll suspend it above a speaker on rubber bands, and I'll put coffee grounds on top of it. And I'll sweep through a frequency generator at about 250 decibels. It's very, very loud. You got to wear hearing protection. And you can watch the top start vibrating. And when it reaches the amplitude frequency, patterns will appear. So what's neat about it is you can see what's called nodes and antinodes. So you're getting into the physics into things. A node is a non-vibrating point. Antinode is a vibrating point. So at a certain frequency, when it reaches maximum amplitude, it'll start jumping up and down, and it's crazy to watch. And you can see the patterns going across it, and you can see what's called a dipole effect. You can see it vibrating here, and you make note of that frequency. So if that note that top likes happens to be in a musical scale A440, I change it by taking braces material off or adding braces on in order to change the frequency of that top. I do the same thing with the back. Now, a lot of mandolin players do it as well, or mandolin makers do it as well, but it seems to work really well to eliminate what we talked about before, the wolf note. Mm-hmm. It's an extra step. It takes a lot of time, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah. That's it.
So no top really is bad. You just have to tune it, basically.
Yeah, the top. When you select the wood for a top, I will go through and I flex it, and I tap it, and I'll scratch it, and I'll sing to it, and you do all these crazy things. People think you're nuts, but you can tell a lot from a guitar top by talking to it. And I'll sit in the top, and I'll you do all these different things with your voice, and you can feel it vibrating, and you can tell if the top's alive. I use a lot of different types of spruce, and once in a while you'll find a piece that it's like the grain will look crappy, and you're like, this is not master grade. This is like a 3rd grade spruce, but you're like, oh my goodness, it's alive.
Yeah.
And the wood will tell you what it wants you to do. Like when you're thicknessing it, you use parameters, between 90 and 125 thousandths, 130 thousandths for the thickness, but you're not actually taking that number into fact, because you might hit a certain note and you're like, I have a note in my head with a free plate, and I tap and I hear the note in my head and I try to match that note. And, and it's come with experience. It's come with doing it as long as I have.
And the knowledge of what to look for, and then how to test it and all that stuff. That's really incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. I mean, learning how to play one's difficult enough, but then to make it and go to that level is pretty insane.
Yeah. I think just to bend the wood and to slap together a crappy sounding acoustic guitar seems like that alone, to build like what would be the cheapest version of a guitar that you buy at CA House, and to be able to build one of those in your house, I would think would be pretty incredible that it would actually hold a note. But the fact that, to go through that level of depth to get it to sound very specific, I mean, that's just knowing so much of the detail of what's involved, that to take it to that high level of fine adjustment.
Yeah, absolutely. But not everybody does it the way I do it, and there's no right way to build a guitar. Yeah. There's no wrong way to build a guitar. It's just what everybody has a different technique. Yeah. And some people say you're nuts for doing all these extra steps. Just do this and it works. But it's to each their own when it comes to guitar making.
You have a certain level of that you're trying to hit, and I think that's really cool to see anybody who really tries to do the very high end of what they could do. When I first met Mike, and we would run around with the birds and stuff like that, and the thing that impressed me about him and Mick is that when it came to we joke around and tease each other all day long, and when it came to the birds and when it came to falconry, these guys were dead serious, and for me, because I kind of half-ass everything. I'm kind of good at a bunch of things. So
yeah, you can't 80 or 90% an instrument because it's just not gonna
right. It's
something's gonna fall off.
Absolutely.
Or you're just gonna have like a weird feel on the neck, or the body's gonna be pointy in the wrong place and not feel comfortable against you, or
the flaw is gonna stand out pretty quickly.
Right.
So how did you get into?
I came into it kind of in a kind of the back doorway. I'm more of a utility guy, and I've been playing in bands for 20 years, and I would just at some point along the way I decided, man, I would really love to have a Les Paul.
Yeah.
Couldn't afford it, because I'm house poor, kid on the way.
Right.
So I'm just like searching the internet, going, man, how can I make a Les Paul just materialize?
Right. I'm the same way with the 911.
Yeah. Someday. So I started looking on the internet, and I found places that were like taking guitars apart and selling bits and pieces here and there, and I was like, well, that might be a good way to do it. And then I stumbled upon a couple of websites of guys that make guitars and that kind of stuff. So I started following these sites and just like reading everything I could, and like all the books that they were recommending, I went and got them.
Yeah.
And then just for a year, I'm just like ghosting on these websites, not joining the club, but just like reading everything I could. And finally, like, I just kind of happened upon it, like, these guys were building guitars, but they weren't necessarily making all the stuff, so they were getting kits.
Yeah.
They were getting these high-end kits, and I found something a little on the lower end to kind of get me started, and it wasn't a Les Paul. The second guitar I built was a Les Paul, funny enough. But I just wanted to build a guitar that I thought would be, a fun project, and I got hooked.
Right.
And the problem is, once you get hooked, you could have bought a Les Paul for $1,000, and now you've got $1,000 in tools.
You're right.
You got $500 in wood.
Yeah.
You've got, and then you've got all this stuff, and you're like, man, now I got to build another guitar to make this all worthwhile.
And you don't have any time to play because well, I mean, I'm sure you still find time to play, but yeah.
And the funny thing is, after I built the Les Paul, I hated it. There wasn't anything wrong with the guitar. It played great. It just didn't feel right. It wasn't the guitar for me after all that, aesthetically it was fun, but it was just whatever the feel was for me just didn't quite work out,
Well, it's you may not have got the guitar that you had hoped for, but you unexpectedly got a hobby that you didn't maybe didn't realize that you were going to love, and maybe that was even the more important part, is that just the love of building them.
Absolutely. And then the other part of it for me was, once we kind of decided to move to West Virginia from Indiana, I needed something to help me kind of transition from playing in bands all the time, where I had gigs every weekend.
Yeah, because
to not playing in bands is like, whew, man, it's like, that was the thing that kept me mentally stable. Right. You work 50, 60 hours a week, and then you play a couple gigs on the weekend, and it was just like the thing that was just my relief. It was my pressure valve.
There's nothing like it in the world.
Yeah, and to go from playing all the time to not playing at all was just really rough for me. And so I needed something to kind of keep me in music, and also just kind of like a new hobby that that I could transition into, and just because I didn't want to be the old guy building birdhouses in my garage. Right. I want someday some kid to walk down the block and go, man, you're building guitars.
Right. Yeah. Well, you kind of had that same journey when we were younger, playing in bands pretty consistently through our 20s and even into our 30s, and it's such a hard thing to recreate as you get older and people have more responsibility, and there's, in addition to playing the gigs, but also the camaraderie of being in a band and the creative process of writing songs and all that stuff, that there's really it is something that you miss, and I think probably at least once a month, I think, man, it'd be fun to be in a band again. And I'm like,
well, even me and you
jammed. You came over to my house and we played, and it was like, but God, it's. I'm glad I had that experience when I was young, because it's probably one of the best things about my life so far.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely a different journey than you. I think you did it when you were in college. I actually dropped out of college and kept playing.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, I could. It was never a money-making venture, though.
Yeah.
But it actually
you put everything into it. Yeah.
And the thing is, like, I talk to guys that from high school every once in a while that stuck with college and and actually started making pretty good money and have families, and because I didn't get married until I was 35, 36.
Right.
But they're like, wow, but you got to play all over the Midwest. I'm like, yeah, me and 5 other stinky guys in a van all weekend, and you occasionally meet a girl, and that kind of, but they're like, just, to them, it just sounds so exciting. And I think maybe the fact that you got to exercise your creative mind where they, and probably still are stuck at an office, job.
Well, it's an adventure, and I don't know. There's I talked about this with Melody Ray, that when you're on the road with a band, everything that you do is centered around playing that show at night. You have a regular job. You come home, you eat dinner, you cut the grass, and it has nothing to do with your job. But when you're on the road, the whole reason why you're wherever you are is because you have a show either in that town or in the town the next night, and you're hanging out basically with the people that you make the music with, and there's you can go out and explore the town and try to make the most of your day, but really the only reason that you're there for whatever time you're on tour is to play that show every night, and being that focused on that performance and that one thing, and being in a place where the only people that are the other guys in the van with you.
Right, you've got the brotherhood you're traveling with, and then you're making intense acquaintances along the way.
Yeah, right. And especially if the band hopefully is good, when you get down with the show, you make friends.
Right. And you're setting up the next gig and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And it's such a unique experience that you can't really get any. I can't think of anything else that you can do where you can travel around city to city and have that. Because I know the first time I ever played on stage, it was a benefit, and all the other bands in town were there, and I remember thinking, this is the dumbest thing in the world. We spent all this time to write these songs so I can get up here and be miserable and nervous, and it's an outdoor gig, and we only played, I think, 5 songs, and I had long hair at the time, and the wind was blowing my hair in my face, and I didn't look at the crowd at all, and it's basically all of our peers and people that I had been gone to see for probably a year after I moved into town, but when it was done, I'm like, oh, when's the next one?
Yeah,
let's do it again.
Yeah,
and then I was hooked, and then after you do it enough, then you don't have the fear, and it's just completely the most amazing feeling, especially when you get the crowd responding to something that you're doing, and you if you're well rehearsed, you just lock into the groove with the band, and wow.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough that they're, I'm locked in with a couple different groups of guys and girls in Indiana that just, it's just something that, some of the performances we had were, I don't know, just changes everything you think about,
Yeah.
And you just want to do it more and more and more. And I don't know. At some point in my 30s, I realized, okay, I'm losing my hair. I might be getting fat, and I'm not going to be on the cover of Teen Beat anytime soon.
Right.
So what am I going to do now?
I always like that when you write a song, and I wasn't the main songwriter, but still was something that we came up with in my basement, and you like it, but you don't really know if anybody's going to like it or not, and we never really had any radio hits or anything like that, but we play some shows and people that came regularly would be singing along, and you're like, wow, people like this song, and to see that the crowd is responding to something that you thought up it's something else, it's.
And for me, it's nice to see that creativity turn from writing music to making the thing that people are going to write the music on.
Yeah.
And the couple of times that I've been able to hand somebody an instrument, so I'm sure for Corey it's been many times more than this, but it's just kid on Christmas Day, and you're just seeing the wonder in their eyes, and they're so happy, and they've got these big smiles on their face, and then they plug it in for the first time or strum it for the first time, and it's just that experience alone just makes me want to do it somewhere, because it's like just that little life-changing thing where they're connecting with something that you made. It's almost like writing a song.
Well, and I know you've mentioned before just the process of making the guitars too, that being down in the shop and
yeah, for me it's I kind of having been an artsy kid, transitioning to something, I know when I'm losing myself in a project where I look up and all of a sudden it's 3 or 4 hours later, and it's only in my head been 30 minutes. And you still want to keep going. That's when I know that I'm locked into something, And guitar making is absolutely one of those things for me.
You get I get the afternoon. I got all afternoon to work on my guitars, and you probably get excited, knowing that you're going to have time to get down there and crave it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There are a lot of weeks that are centered around 4 hours on Sunday, 4 hours on Sunday, 4 hours on Sunday. Or I'm going up to Corey's. I get
in the shop, no one will leave a lot of times. It's like, okay, I have a day job. It's like I'll be in the shop like 14 hours. It's like, man, I've got to get up in like 4 hours to go to my day job. I'd just rather stay in the shop and be tired tomorrow. You get in that frame of mind where when you're creating, and if things are going like you want them to go, you don't want to stop, you don't want to change that. Is there just that other level that you can't control? It's pretty neat. It's pretty cool.
It's probably a feeling that I think a lot of people maybe rarely experience, or maybe never experience, that thing where you're just so focused and enjoying what you're doing at that moment that you're just kind of on a high, right? I think you probably even have that with
we talked about that going out with the birds and stuff. You just get lost in the moment, and for just 30 minutes you're just lost, and everything else doesn't matter, So it's probably the same way when
this guy gets lost in the brush. I'm telling you, when we went out and there's these thickets that are huge, bigger than the footprint of this house, and Mike just disappears in there in his, we call it the Kevlar suit, and I'm like, there is no way, I don't care if supermodels were down there with a check for $1 million, I'm not going in there.
You'd be in there.
Well, yeah, probably for that. He comes out with blood on his face, and
building guitars is cooler though. So
I don't know, man. I think everything has its own place, and falconry is pretty damn cool.
I think they both trump doing a podcast. So you guys got me beat, but I do ride motorcycles to try to keep up with y'all. It does kind of, I was talking earlier that I have a motorcycle that's been sitting in my basement that I took apart, and with the goal of learning to not just ride them but work on them, and it makes me kind of like want to really tackle that project again, and the idea of as much as I enjoy riding them, I think that there is a joy in being able to piece one together and to get on that thing for the first time and say, I took this thing all the way down to nothing. And I mean, I think maybe building one from scratch might be putting my life in more jeopardy than I need to. But certainly, taking that XS 650 stock bike and turning it into a pretty cool cafe racer would be, kind of like you said, there's multiple disciplines. There's the mechanical just to get the engine running, but also aesthetics and paint. And I know you guys are kind of inspiring me to maybe pull that thing out of the basement and take it up in the garage.
Well, that's for me. It's like everything's a slow move. It's just I've got so many other things going on that when I start a guitar, the thought process may have been 4 years ago, and by the time I'm actually when I get into the building part of it, I mean the real span of it may only take a month and a half, but with everything else going on, I've got a year to sometimes 2 years into a guitar. And you just don't, but once again, you live for those moments. But you gotta really love the slow part of the process and just be patient with it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the key to instrument making is the patient aspect, because you can't rush through anything.
And falconry too, right? I mean, it's all right. It's all.
Well, I think with everything, you can't just wake up and decide that you're going to be something that day. Everything's a process, So
it definitely processes.
I mean, when you're building a guitar, is there like, and this might be a silly question, but is there like one step, like when you're putting a guitar? I know Laney, your guitars are set neck guitars, which in my mind is like crazy to build bolt arms.
And that means they're glued in.
They're
right?
glued.
That means it's glued in.
And obviously Corey's stuff is unbelievable. When you're building one, is there one step that you're just like, okay, I know you really can't screw this part up? Like the most critical part, or is it all just?
It's all the same. You mess up anything, and the instrument won't be the way that it could be. It may work. I mean, there's things like if I make my own fingerboards, so the frets have to be in the right spot, and the bridge has to be in the right spot, and you have a little bit of leeway of where that bridge goes, but then you have to worry about your action height. So if the bridge is not in the right place, you have to raise your action higher so that it'll play in tune, or lower your action too much so it'll play in tune. So there's, it's very critical. I mean, you're dealing in thousandths of an inch when you're working on instruments.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, I mean, the more skilled I get in building a guitar, there are steps that seem like impossible when you at the beginning, So like carving a neck, or just because if you go too far, that's it. You can't put wood back on.
Get the Elmers out.
And the angle of the neck to the body makes a difference. You've got like maybe a half a degree that you can kind of play with. And so there's a lot of dry fitting. Before you glue it in, you stick it in there and clamp it in and check it out with a ruler or a straight edge, or make sure that everything's going to line up. And sometimes it still changes a little bit. The wood, gives you the direction that it wants, and that's just the nature of working with wood.
Oh, absolutely. Well, when you set an acoustic neck, you have to worry about what's called top deflection, how far the top is going to move up when you put understring tension, because you have like 140 pounds of pressure there.
Okay.
How far the neck's going to move up.
Pulling the bridge up.
So it's the acoustic guitar is trying to destroy itself as soon as you.
It's trying to fold in half.
It's trying to fold in half, and then you cut a big hole right in the center.
Where the best supports to help things out.
Yeah, it makes no sense. The acoustic guitar is the worst design ever, but it works. But like I said, when you set a neck, you have to have that angle right, and you have to compensate for all these things. Okay, how tall the fret are you going to use? How thick is your fingerboard? Your neck rake angle? How thick is your bridge going to be? How much height your saddle? How tall your saddle going to be? Okay, are you using medium strings? Are you using light strings? Are you using heavy strings?
So tension, just the tension on the strings alone changes everything.
Exactly. Then the truss rod. Okay, you have the truss rod, which if you don't know what a truss rod is, that's what you adjust the curve of the neck in. So it's called the relief. So you have to figure in, okay, how much relief can I get out of this particular truss rod am I using? If I put medium strings on it, am I going to be able to get enough back tension out of it to get it flat? Is it a double action truss rod? There's all these different factors you have to plan into the instrument that you don't think about unless you're building these instruments. Mm-hmm. And like we talked about when you first got here about the layered necks, the laminated necks, and they're stiffer and they're better, but nobody does. Not that many people do them.
Yeah, I mean aesthetically when you go and look to the shop, you're looking at mahogany necks and stuff and the higher end guitars. That's air quotes for you there, but on a podcast, but you don't see the laminate necks, so.
You don't unless it's what's the guy's name? Olson. He builds all high-end guitars, and they all have laminated necks. And it's one of the only acoustic makers, that's really well known that does that. And it makes perfect sense, but it's not accepted. It becomes a part as a maker where you have to look at tradition and technology. So, every guitar player in the world wants, I want a Brazilian rosewood D28 Martin with an Adirondack top, and it's got to have, the diamond on the back of the neck, and it's all about tradition. But, if you build a guitar now out of Brazilian rosewood, which is, it's on the CITES list, so it's endangered, it's hard to get, it's really expensive.
And you may not be able to ship it out of the United States once you build it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Real quick, just for people that don't know what a laminated neck is, it's where you take different pieces of wood and instead of one solid piece of wood, it's...
Yeah, you're gluing several layers together.
Yeah.
And basically, it can be 2 pieces, it can be 3 pieces, it can be 5 pieces. I've seen a frameless neck that was literally 20 pieces of small wood.
Wow.
Glued enough width to make it. Yeah. Basically like a plywood, but with the grains running different directions, so that they would work against each other to make the neck stable.
Wow.
Yeah. And speaking of setting the neck, it's like going back to the beginning of that. When the first couple of guitars I set the neck with, I had a shot of whiskey and my glue bottle. So I spread the glue, jam the neck in there, get the clamp on, shot of whiskey, because it's like the most insane 30 seconds of your life setting a neck on my guitar.
Well, see, I'm doing French dovetails. So if you don't know what a French dovetail is, you're like V-shaped, and then it's V-shaped in 2 different directions. So you have to cut each cheek and get the neck angle right, plus get the side-to-side motion right. So there's multiple facets that you can mess up if you're doing a French cut dovetail. And that's the most common for acoustic guitars. And you talk about, the first time you do it, you want to drink, because it's, it'll really mess with your head trying to figure out all those angles.
Well, and the acoustic guitar that you showed us downstairs has these crazy curves along the back, but then it curves up over, and you were saying that's all bent wood, and that's just such a crazy shape to get wood in. I couldn't imagine being able to carve that out of wood, let alone bend wood into that shape. And obviously there's like a mold or something.
Well, there's a guy named Charles Fox who's kind of like the godfather of guitar making. He's trained like so many luthiers over the years. He has a company. He builds these guitars called Ergo, for ergonomic guitars. But basically, C. Fox guitars and the Ergo is his main thing. But he developed this bender back in I'd say the late 70s or early 70s, late 60s, somewhere in that time frame. That it's basically a mold, and initially it had light bulbs in it. And you took 2 stainless steel sheets. So you put stainless steel sheet on the bottom, stainless steel sheet on the top. You put your wood in between the 2 sheets, and the light bulbs would heat up.
Yeah.
And then you pressed it to press down the waist area, and you bent the sides with these spring-loaded things. And it's a beautiful thing. It works great. But that's how I do my bending, is with what I call a Fox bender.
Was that kind of based on like boat making at all, or?
I'm not sure how he came up with the idea. The guy's a genius. I mean, he's done so many things that just to increase the technology of lutherie over the years.
I know when they make boats, they've got these long tubes that have
well,
they build up the steam inside of it.
There's no steaming in this,
right?
But it's kind of a similar idea. I mean, it really is. I mean, if you Google Fox bender, you'd be able to see exactly what they are. I mean, Luthiers Mercantile sells them out of California. But it's hard to explain without seeing how it works.
Yeah, look it up on the internet, people. You all got phones in your hand right now. Put down the Facebook. Now, you guys kind of knew each other, but didn't know I forget. You kind of told me that story. That
I started working at the same place that Corey did, and within 3 months we kind of discovered each other.
Yeah.
Because I'd overheard something about him making guitars, and so I was like, hey, you make guitars? And then we started, of course, once you start talking jargon, then we're like, okay, I like this guy. Yeah. And then Corey invited me up to his shop, and from there it's been actually one of my more cherished friendships since I've been here. So
I appreciate that. I feel the same way. That's great.
Now, how many other guys you think around here are making guitars the way you guys
There's
are?
actually quite a few.
Is there really?
Believe it or not, yeah. There's Bill Krook, probably one of the more famous guys around here. He makes guitars for Brad Paisley and sells tons of guitars in Nashville.
Oh yeah, all over Nashville. Pretty much anybody who's anybody in Nashville has a Krook guitar. He does some beautiful work.
Because until Lanny mentioned that he was building guitars, I don't think I ever met anybody. I knew there was a guy, Timmy Taylor. He was in a band called Brainiac, and he would get those garage sale guitars, and he would kind of, like you said, you can make any guitar sound good if you massage it enough, and, and he would completely rebuild them, and they're the craziest looking guitars, and he'd paint them like these outrageous colors, and they sounded great. And I think he must have spent a lot of time getting him exactly how he wanted him, winding his pickups or whatever he had to do. But that was the only other person I knew that actually did any kind of custom work on it, came close to building a guitar.
Yeah, there's like I said, there's a guy that I taught, Bob Talkington in Moundsville, who builds on occasion. He's kind of stopped over the time. He does more with motorcycles and cars now than he does with guitars. There's a guy over in Corey Eller, that does it. There's supposed to be a ukulele maker in Wheeling who's like world renowned.
Oh wow!
Does called like the Hive ukuleles or something like that.
Huh. I know there's a couple of guys out of Pittsburgh or around Western PA that do a lot of stuff too. I know that I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but I just remember seeing them on the near.
Yeah, there's quite a few. This is called like the golden age of Lutherie because like everybody does it now. The YouTube has been amazing for
helping people get started.
Exactly, because you want to learn to do something, you watch YouTube, and you can, with a little bit of practice, you can do it. Anybody can do what we do.
Yeah, I mean it's funny because we were just talking before you guys came over, and it's like I still go back and watch videos of guys, and like when I'm working out, I'll just put on YouTube, and I'll something as easy as standing atop is what we were talking about, for a guitar, and I'll watch in 45 minutes of working out, I'll watch maybe 5 or 6 videos, and these guys all have different techniques. Some of them are really horrible. Yeah. Some of them are guys that are masters have been doing this for a long time, and so somewhere in the middle, you can kind of get a lot of information out of it.
Well, I think maybe what sets you apart is the fact that while you are working out, rather than watching the news or watching some show on Netflix, that your go-to is to rewatch a video on guitar making that you care enough about it that it's you're constantly trying to get better, and it's I think whether it's guitar making, falconry, or making movies, and that's why, and honestly that's why I don't really do much with movies anymore, is to really be good you have to constantly be working on getting better and learning new techniques, and that slow process of for me the closest thing I guess I can come up to is with the movie is that you spend 6 months getting ready to film a movie, and then you have a few weeks there, hopefully you don't stretch it out too long, where you're filming, and then once it's filmed you got to, whatever you've shot, that's what you have to live with, and a year later you have a movie, and you showed us the first guitar you did, and there was a little thing on there that you didn't like, and the same thing when I watch one of our movies, I go,
well, sure, yeah, for me it's like I every guitar has a little mistake on it,
sure.
and
that's what you notice first, right?
Well, the thing is, as you get better, and what makes you a master at this, or start learning the mastery of it, is how you fix those mistakes.
Right,
exactly.
Do you freak out and start a fire with your with the pieces of wood you want to turn against, or do you make it work?
I always looked at what I thought was a deficiency in one of our movies, and like I know one of the first movies I did, I noticed every scene after it was done, you have 2 people standing at like 45-degree angle talking, and in every scene that there's dialogue.
But you learn from that, right?
And I came up with the idea,
and you just keep that in your bag of tricks for next time. And the thing about anything is, it's like as much as you learn what to do, you learn what not to do.
Yeah,
and I would, anything that really bothered me about a movie, the next movie, even written into the script and the story, was, all right, I'm going to actively try to fix this the next time. So whatever it was that I didn't like, whether it was, the people were too static, I'm going to write lots of motion. And if I thought it was too wordy and not that I actually went and did a movie with no dialogue. And so, I always, that idea that rather than going, I screwed that up, I'm never going to do it again, you're like, no, now I know where the weaknesses are, work on it, and then the other weaknesses will come up, and you work on those, and you almost have to accept the fact that, there's something nice about not being great at it at first, where there's all these milestones to achieve, and so you want to have that thing. Well, next time I'm going to get it better. But I guess the reason why I got on that tangent was the idea that all these things, they're not something that you're going to master in a year overnight, and so that the idea of taking a very long journey just to make one guitar. Whether or to make a movie, or what it takes to get that bird and get it ready to to release for the first time, the level of dedication, that it's not something that you can do overnight, and it takes a lifetime to perfect. There's a beauty in that, but in our society these days, everybody wants things done quick,
right?
And so
quick now, right now.
Yeah. I built one at Sock Tom done.
Yeah. And that's fine. I think it's good for people to give up on stuff that they're not going to be passionate about.
Well, yeah. And I think the fact that,
and because it's like, if you're not good at falconry, you're kind of, what do you do?
So
you got the bird.
Probably not for you.
You need to know that before you even get the bird.
I think that's. You said just a few minutes ago, but maybe that, and as I get older, I'm trying to figure out life a little more. But maybe life really is about learning what not to do than what you should be doing. You know what I mean? It's like we're building guitars or training a bird or pretty much anything. If someone asks you, well, what are you going to do next? I don't know, but I know what I'm not going to do. Right. Not to get too deep, but it's like, man, maybe that's it. You just know what you're not going to do.
I think that's very important. Anybody that comes along that directed films, with us, that when their first time directing it, my biggest piece of advice is know what you don't want, because someone can come up with an idea and you're like, I never thought about that. That's a great idea, and that applies to life in general. I started a little business, and so I know the things that I don't want to do and why I started it and what I want to avoid. But new opportunities, things I haven't thought of, if they come down the pike, I'm open-minded to them. But I think it is in life knowing what you don't want. Is really a big part of it. I could say, well, yeah, we could have 5 gallons of blood, in this movie, but it's not a bloodbath movie. So, you pretty quickly know that you don't want to do that. But then somebody goes, but what if they've tripped when they're coming down the steps? Oh, that's a great idea. And that probably, and I think you guys probably see this too, is that when you do take on something like that, the lessons that you learn in the process of following that thing that you love, that how it applies to your life in general, that there's philosophies of how to make a guitar right, it kind of apply to how to make other decisions and do things in your life, right, and the benefit of precision and perfection and other things that you learn along the way.
Sure. Well, like when you're building an instrument, it's like giving birth to a child. It's the way I can see that too. Because like you're taking a design, it could be somebody else's design or your design, but no matter what you're doing, you're putting your whole self into this instrument, and it's like you're creating. You're very intimate with it. You're spending all this time with it, and when it's done, you have something you can be proud of, and no matter how bad the journey was. You're like, oh my goodness, cook a bowl of rosewood. Anybody who's ever worked with that stuff is like, you got to use, epoxies to glue it together because the resin content's so great. Right? It's a pain in the butt. But when you get it done, and this instrument is so nice, and it sounds so good, and it plays so nice, and you've poured your whole passion into it, and you've essentially, like I said, you've given birth to your guitar child.
Yeah. Well, and even though it is a pain in the ass, the fact that that you took on that challenge and you successfully handled it, there's got to be a real sense of satisfaction.
Oh, absolutely. And I've told Laney this before. I said, when I'm done with a guitar, I don't want to see it again. You know, I really don't. I mean, you've driven yourself nuts doing this.
Yeah, it's pretty obsessive.
It is, because you're like, you know, I want it done, I want it done, I want it done. And you know, my customers are awesome and are really patient when I'm doing this stuff. But it's like, okay, I pick it up and play it. I'll think, oh, this thing sounds great. I'll play like 5 tunes on it. I'm like, I can get it on my site. Yeah. Let me go start something else.
Otherwise, you'd have like 400 guitars in your house or something.
Yeah, well, I probably do, but that's a whole other story.
I know that once we have a movie premiere and we show it to an audience, you know, I may go back and watch it.
But you've been, but just getting through the editing process.
I'm
and
so ready to move on to do something else. And the last thing I want to do is watch that thing again. Now, you know, maybe like if you ran into one of your customers and they had that guitar and you're like, oh, I haven't seen this thing in a couple of years, you might enjoy seeing it like an old friend or something like that.
Right.
But maybe not the next week. Yeah.
Yeah, it was always the new challenge when it comes to, like, you know, Laney's, we've talked before, we always have like 5 projects in our head that we want to do while we're still working on one project.
Yeah.
You know, I'm building 4 acoustics right now for people, and I just got to order for a hybrid, a Flying V hollow body electric acoustic kind of.
Oh, wow.
It's the weirdest thing you ever see, carved top. You know, and it's something I would never do for myself, but I'm into the project because it's somebody's vision.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what keeps me going, is somebody will give me their vision, or, you know, and I can create that, or they'll have this weird inlay they want to do. So.
And when it catches, when it grabs a certain part of you, and you go, oh, I see what you're talking about, and you get excited about it.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. I definitely, when we would be pitching movie ideas, and someone, I'd be like, oh, that's too good to not make it. You know, I know that. So yeah, that's a really great feeling when you lay in bed and you can't wait to get up in the morning because you want to get started on it, or you don't want to go to bed at night. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, there's definitely been nights I've been up too late thinking about things, you know, searching for parts on the internet, or, you know, where can I find these tuners cheaper, you know, or just obsessing about little details, you know. It's crazy. I think for me, like, the next step is going to be, you know, I want to design my own guitar that's, you know, the body's going to be a little bit different. I've already got my own headstock, and I made it clear that, you know, with people that are buying guitars from me, that I will not be doing replicas.
Yeah,
you know, I'm not going to put somebody else's logo on something that I've worked on for, you know, who knows how long.
Right.
But I want, for me, I got some personal projects that I want to get done, and that's my next goal, is just concentrating on the design that I've had in the box for a while. Yeah. I've got 4 bodies cut out. I just haven't had time to get to them. Right. You know, so that's this summer. I'm gonna do a prototype for my thing. You know,
because you know, when I first met you, I think even before I knew you as a musician, I knew that you were an artist too. So you have that whole background in addition to being a luthier and a musician, is that an art background. So to be able to express that side of.
Yeah, the creative thing was definitely another reason I got into guitar making, because I was missing it. Had gone into retail and was doing management, and, you know, managing people and stuff coming in and out of a shop is interesting, but it's just not. It's not me.
Sure.
It's not my total thing, you know. Yeah. It's a means to an end. It's a great job, but it's just not where I'm at as far as my heart, you know. So I missed that creative thing, and I really needed to get back to something where I was working with my hands.
I think it's important to have those things outside of what you have to do, to have that thing waiting when you get home. For me, it's obviously motorcycles. You know, that in fact. Sometimes I think the best thing about working at the hospital is that I'm stuck in there for 12 hours, 3 days a week, and on a nice sunny day. And man, I appreciate that first day that I'm off, that I can go out and ride, you know. I feel glad that I have 4 or 5 different things that I really enjoy doing in my free time that get me excited, and I think. Kind of feel bad for people that don't necessarily haven't found that thing, because it's not not everybody does.
Right. No. Yeah. Like, I think every person should have some sort of hobby. If it's collecting, it's something that gets you away from the television.
Cooking, gardening, anything.
Just get up off of your ass and do something. It
excites you. Yeah.
I was a fidgety kid, and so I'm the same way. It's like, finding a focus on just one thing to be creative on has always been a problem. I mean, guitars have definitely taken the forefront, but who knows it? Maybe I'll be making wooden bicycles in 5 years.
I already designed one.
Yeah, see, I know. I mow the lawn, and like, there's so many different things that go in through my head. It's like, and bicycles could be in there somewhere.
And Corey, you're using some new technology. We're talking about the CNC machine that you have.
Yeah, for years, for the first, I don't know, probably 75 instruments I built entirely by hand. 50, 75 instruments just without any power tools whatsoever.
Wow.
And I've been doing this since, like I said, since I was 15, 16, something like that. I started, I'm kind of getting more and more away from that. I've got a CNC machine. I do all my inlay on the CNC. I do my neck carving on my CNC. If I do electric guitars, I do the bodies on the CNC. Pretty much all the stuff that, that it has to be real critical, but doesn't have to do with tone.
Yeah.
I can do on the CNC machine and make it more precise. And it's repeatable. That's what I like about it.
Yeah. And I mean, the learning curve of one of those machines probably...
it's not bad. YouTube. I went to a job interview and for running the CNC machine a while ago, and I told them, they're like, well, how'd you learn to operate this? I'm like, YouTube. They kind of looked at me like I had 3 heads. I'm like, well, no. I said, if you want to learn it, it can be learned. CNC machine is not nearly as difficult to operate as one would think. I mean, I made my first guitar neck at the end of the first week of having it.
Oh wow!
And that's a 3-dimensional object. And the G coding is it's a little crazy. That's the language that the computer or the CNC understands in order to operate. And with the new softwares, you don't even have to know that much about G coding. I use a software called Fusion 360 by Autodesk, and it's CAD, CAM, and post processor all in one. So anybody out there who's run a CNC machine and who's using the software knows what I'm talking about here. You can design something, make it into a 3D model, and have a working prototype in an afternoon.
Wow.
It's amazing to me. If say you get an idea for electric guitar, and you're like, okay, I wonder if this will work, but I don't want to take that piece of mahogany or that piece of Palfaro and carve it up if it's not going to work.
Yeah.
You throw in a piece of hardware store pine in there. You let the machine cut it out, and then you have a 3D model. Or you'd actually use foam. I've used 2-inch thick foam to make it, and then you know what you had to begin with, and you can make tweaks to your 3D model. It's so much nicer than having to hand cut everything.
And it's kind of a nice tool that allows you to dream a little bit bigger, I imagine, because the things that it'll let you do and test before you, like you said, actually put it into using the good wood.
The amount of finite detail that you can get out of it is amazing. We're talking about fit and finish.
Oh my goodness!
Inlay work is, it's seamless. It's crazy how
you have to program an error into it in order for the inlay to fit, or else the pressure will pop the inlay back out.
Really?
Yeah. I used to do all my inlay by hand for years. Mother-of-pearl, abalone, whatever. And I'm using a lot of what's called reconstituted stone now. So it's turquoise, malachite, different stones. And they're hard to cut by hand because they're so brittle.
Yeah.
But I put a 1mm bit in it in the CNC machine, and I control the feeds and speeds, so how fast the spindle's spinning, how fast that it's going around to make the cut, how much it's plunging. There's all these different parameters you can do when you're writing your programming. So I can make it cut as hard or as soft as I want. So you can make it cut extremely fine details, and then make it cut the negative out to pop it into the fingerboard of the bridge. It's it's amazing. It's an absolutely amazing piece of machinery.
We'll have to take a field trip up there and check that out.
Well, the thing that's funny is a lot of people that are traditionalists consider the CNC machine to be cheating. Yeah. But the thing is, it's not. It's just another tool, and it's a way to be more efficient. And the thing is, it takes just as much head work,
sure,
to think about what goes into the CNC machine as it does, to actually learn how to, hold a chisel correctly or something,
Well, and like you said with the logos, that you're doing things that you really would be impossible by hand. So it's still difficult.
It's expanding what you can do, and it's doing it faster.
Yeah.
So it's actually, and the thing is, it's making it, it's making it so you can do a lot more things and speed up your process as well.
And your creativity can be, I'm sure, go even wilder with
Oh, absolutely. Like with learning to do 3D modeling has made, some of my design work just, like in the last 2 years, I showed you a picture of that nailers guitar I'm going to do. Being able to take something that was on a pencil sketch into a 3D model and then be able to push it into the CNC machine, it's just been amazing for me, because I draw okay, but I don't draw that well.
Right.
But with a computer, I can draw anything.
Yeah.
And so the sky's the limit. I'm just designed a dragon and a knight for a headstock of a guitar now. It's with the flames coming down the fingerboard. And, I've always dreamed of doing that, but there's no way I could have done that until I got into the 3D modeling aspect in the CNC machine.
Yeah, if you can dream it up, and then you dream up something crazy, then you still got to figure out how to do it on the CNC machine, right? Yep. So that's where you're still at that level where you're still problem solving and trying to figure things out. Absolutely. And breaking new ground, and so it's still the same problems, but it's just at a different level.
For sure. Well, there's a guy I talked about, James Olson, before. Laney said how some people said it was cheating. Now Olson uses a CNC machine on his necks now, and he said for a while people were telling him, like, that's cheating. He's like, well, I can hand carve it for you if you like. He's like, and everybody he's told that to said nobody's ever taken him up on the offer. So, people want to talk about it, but, I can do it either way. I can do it by hand, I can do it with the machine. But if you want the same product over and over and over to be exactly the same,
And you're not trying to find the hardest route up the mountain. You're just trying to make a great guitar, and whatever you can use to make a great guitar.
And the fact of the matter is, with bigger guitar makers, that's what they're using. Basically, it's a CNC, and they're making 8 guitars at once, on this thing, and it's just they're just popping them out, and they just stick more wood in there, and it just keeps going.
Yeah, they do the design part, which in setting up the machine, which I think is where they do that once and then repeat it a million times. You might repeat it a few times, but you're basically coming up with something new pretty often.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've built the same guitar twice, maybe once in my life. Whenever I built 2 twin guitars, other than that, I've never built the same guitar.
Yeah,
I just don't. I've always looking to expand, try something new, different materials, different shapes.
Yeah.
With the Durst model, like I showed you downstairs with the weird cutaway. I mean, that was dreamed up by a guy named Bob Durst. Sent me a napkin sketch, and it's neat to get somebody else's input on what they think a great guitar should be.
Yeah.
And
that is interesting. When for the longest time I only wanted to direct films that I wrote, because I thought, well, then my heart's into it and everything. But then we did some Ron Scott films, and there was something about taking something that someone already got started and interpreting it, and to work within the parameters that someone else was set, and maybe they came up with an idea that I would never come up with. So now I need to figure out a way to bring it to life, much in the same way that you had to bring his design into life. And there is something rewarding about taking the torch from somebody else versus doing it wholly from the start to finish by yourself. Unexpectedly, I found that I liked that even more, and I'm not sure exactly why it was. I think other than maybe just because at the point where the script's already written and handed to you, you see it with fresh eyes, where if you write a script, by the time you go over it and edit it 20 million times, and now it's time to shoot it, you're like, I'm sick of looking at this thing already. So there's something to be said for kind of being fresh. It's already, all that part's done, and you can kind of jump in kind of a little bit farther down the process.
Yeah, well, I think most things, like in no matter what you do, you're taking influences from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Even if it's not directly from somewhere else. I don't know. I always joke and say there's no original ideas left. Somebody's done it somewhere.
Yeah.
You just haven't seen them do it yet.
You just combine the things that work the best for you.
Exactly. You're putting them in a blender, and
all the notes have already been used for music.
Yeah.
All the best classic designs for guitar are already out there. You just take the elements that you like the best and try to put your stamp on it.
And I think we had this conversation with regards to art that working within the parameters. There's something about it that's actually kind of rewarding, because we even did that one art night where we give people a grab bag that maybe had a couple different colored pencils, a highlighter, and the challenge was here's what you have to work with, see what you can come up with, and then to add a different element to it. We're going to have a theme of what you have to draw, and in that case I think Mindy did Mindy Yarbrough, is that how you say her last name?
I think so.
Yeah, she did a mechanical shark using a pink highlighter and a blue colored pencil, and it was a really incredible piece of art that being forced to, versus walking into an art room where every single art supply you've ever wanted and being overwhelmed by choice, you got to work within this box, but within that framework, there's a lot that you can still do. So gave you a napkin sketch, so you've got to stay true to that, but then the interpretation that there's still a million ways to interpret it. And I think that there's something about really honing in on, being limited as far as how far you can go, but within that trying to, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I always like it when you're kind of restricted as far as how far you can go, and still trying to. The
limitations force you to go in other directions.
Yeah,
and that can be interesting. Certainly, for me, I'm just working with material choice. I'm not necessarily going from a sketch. I don't know. I can't imagine taking something that someone else has sketched out and fleshing it out.
But I guess for you, the ultimate limitation is that it's still got to feel good and play good. And
absolutely, and so that's the thing with any guitar or any instrument, really. If you're going to lock in with it, you have to have. It has to be a feeling that you have. That has to fit your hand. It has to feel good resting against your body. Those are all things that when I'm picking up a guitar, those are things that I'm looking at. Is something poking me in the hand?
Right.
Does my rib feel weird here?
Right.
Can I play faster down here on the neck? Then they're just like, and those are things that you not necessarily say out loud, but it's just a feeling when you pick up an instrument that's supposed to be yours.
Yeah.
And for me, the couple of guitars that I'm making now that I just was making extra, I've got buyers for them, but it's contingent upon the fact of whether or not they like the instrument. Yeah. So, looking at a picture as opposed to picking it up and playing it, if you don't have a connection with it, don't buy it.
Yeah.
Somebody else will love it.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't want somebody to buy it just to have it sit on the wall.
That drives me nuts. If I do get an instrument back that's been built for years to do, guitars need adjustment, and it's not beat up or they haven't played it, I'm like, well, I feel like I failed,
This is not a show pony.
Yeah.
This is a.
But I've never had that happen. Most of my customers buy 5 to 10 instruments. A lot of my customers have bought multiple guitars.
Wow.
It's I got a guy, my cousin in Chicago, I think he's like on a 6 or 7 guitar he's bought from me.
Wow.
It's neat, that you're able to mesh with somebody and build their vision,
Yeah.
If they say, okay, I want a kind of a traditional Martin, but I want to do X, Y, and Z to it, and then they love it when they get it, and that they're going to feel that connection with the instrument.
Yeah.
It's kind of tough though, because they're waiting a year, 18 months for a guitar, and you're nervous the whole time. It's like, okay, I'm doing everything they said. And
are they going to like it?
Are they going to like it?
Yeah.
Are they going to love it? And it's kind of neat. Like when you first string up an acoustic instrument for the first time, it sounds like absolute garbage for the first half hour.
Really?
It is so weird. It's so weird. You string it up, and the strings are stretched and the top stretching. The whole thing is contorting and getting used to these things, and you're playing it, and you're like, oh gosh, there's no way this guy's going to like this instrument. And after about a half hour, it comes into its own. It's so weird.
It's born.
Yeah, I mean, even some of my electric guitars have done that. But
yeah, and then the more it gets played, the more that just the I don't know, it kind of settles into its own vibrational pattern or something. I don't know what it is, but it just finds its own sweet spot eventually.
And really, that's the ultimate goal of the thing, is to play it. That's how I feel about motorcycles. I don't like the idea of a motorcycle that just sits there and gets driven to the bar a couple miles. I've had multiple motorcycles, and I firmly believe that they need to be ridden or get rid of them. If I don't have time to flex them all a little bit and take them out, then there's let somebody else have it that's going to ride it. And I've rescued motorcycles sitting in the back of people's garages because they weren't being ridden. I just bought one this winter because I knew that it was having a couple little problems, and that the kid was never going to do anything with it. It wasn't worth that much money, and that was just going to rot in his garage until the tires dry rotted. And I pushed it home to my house in the middle of January in a very cold night, probably like a good quarter of a mile. But I didn't want to see it go to waste. And it's one of these days I'm going to get Mike to come over and help me tear it apart. And you guys are inspiring me to really kind of want to do that tonight. So what are you doing after this? You have to work in the morning, Dave.
Moving rocks.
It's going to take a few more beers.
When you get to the point and you have your guitar and it's all put together, and it's waiting for that final step, and to me it's almost like another art form of finishing it. So you put a nitro finish on, or what do you put on it? I mean, it's almost like another art form. But do you guys sit back and think about, all right, I've got this natural wood guitar sitting right now, and what do I want the finished piece to look like? Is it something do you have that in your head, like when you're going through that design phase, like this one's going to be like
sometimes I mean like I think the wood kind of dictates to me what's going to happen with it. I mean, if you get something doesn't particularly have a very interesting grain, it's probably going to get a nice solid color on top of it. If you get and part of it can be the design process. You're buying specific woods to do specific finishes on. So if I've got a couple pieces of wood together and I see them together and I'm like, okay, that needs a burst on it, or that just needs to be a nice golden color, or those kind of. To me, that it happens pretty quick. I don't know if.
Yeah, usually on my acoustics, unless I do a sunburst, which I've only done a handful of sunbursts over the years on acoustics. When I'm selecting the wood, I'm looking at the natural beauty of the wood. I mean, I'm using rosewood, and I'm using koa,
and you're using like spruce or cedar top.
Spruce or cedar top, yeah. The natural wood is just usually what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And when I design an instrument, like if somebody didn't specifically order it, I'm trying to get the combination of the woods to complement each other.
Yeah.
And then the whole tonality of the wood too. So like a cedar top with a mahogany back and sides is just a great combination for a guitar.
Yeah.
There's different woods that work so well together. It might not be necessarily the look as much as the tone. Some people will be like hell bent on a particular wood, and then they're describing what tone they're looking for, and I'm like, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
You want a maple guitar with a maple top, and you want it to sound mellow. It's not going to sound mellow.
It's going to be nice and bright.
I just can't do. Well, can't you do that? No, I can't. It's impossible.
Yeah, with your harder woods, you get brighter tones, and with your softer, I guess mahogany would be considered a softer wood.
Mahogany is softer wood, yeah.
And you're going to get mellow tones, or those deeper notes.
Yeah, but mahogany is ugly as a sin to me. I think it's one of the ugliest woods out there. I mean,
it's just easy to work with.
I love it. I mean,
from the grain pattern kind
of. It's ugly.
Once in a while, you get a piece of mahogany that just has these awesome ribbons of wood figure in it.
Yeah.
And I've been lucky enough that one of the guitars I'm building right now, the back on it is mahogany.
Yeah, that's a beautiful guitar.
And it looks amazing. And I just I picked out the wood, but I think I got lucky as we're putting the clear coats on it, because I decided not to stain it at all.
Yeah.
And it's just really glowing.
Cool.
Yeah, that I did notice that the wood on that. Is the one that you showed me downstairs?
Oh no, actually,
hanging in my shop.
Okay. The one downstairs, the goldish one.
Oh yeah.
The wood on that was beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful wood.
Yeah.
But like you said, if I'm building a mahogany guitar, I'm going to stain it. Most likely, I'm going to stain it with a brown stain because I think I just don't think mahogany is that pretty.
I mean, that's what fascinates me about. I mean, building a guitar. One, I like guitars, but you have to. There's engineering to it because you have to obviously understand frequencies and the physical dimensions and design of the thing. The woodworking craftsmanship's incredible. You have to be a painter. Yeah. I mean, you have to have finishing skills, and then you have to play it. You have to know what sounds good as a musician. It's pretty crazy. I mean,
there's a lot of
4 disciplines or more than that.
And then if it's electric, you got to do wiring and soldering.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of elements that go into it.
I'm giving up the birds.
No, man.
And I think that's what draws people like Lanny and like me to instrument making is because of the multimedias and all the things you have to know. Because I build furniture as well, and I actually have a provisional patent on a gun safe.
Oh, nice.
So I do other things other than build guitars. But it always goes back to guitars for me because it's the most challenging thing that I do.
Sure.
It's like. There's a guy who said he was a knife maker. He's like, I build knives not because I have to make knives, because I have to make knives.
Right.
And that's the way I feel about guitars.
Yeah. That it is when you find that thing that you're really just compelled to do it, and that you can't not do it.
Yeah, that's it.
And I think if people that don't have that thing, they, for me, I guess now that it's motorcycles has taken over, if it's a nice day, and even, towards the end of when we were making movies, if it's a nice day, and I spent all winter working on this movie, and then we got to shoot, and it's the very first nice day of spring, and I'm like just thinking, I want to be on a motorcycle right now. Like the idea of not riding to work on the day when it's nice and I know it's going to rain,
I got myself in the doghouse just a week ago, and I came home for lunch. I'm like, it's a nice day, low humidity. It's a good day to spray lacquer. So I open the garage door, spray a little lacquer before I come up and have a couple hot dogs before I go back to work. And my wife comes home early, and she can't stand the smell of the lacquer. It gives her a headache, and I got in big trouble for that.
But you can't resist, right? You're like,
but the thing is, this is a perfect day for it, And so I tried to squeeze it in, and oh man, I got in trouble.
That's the reason they're in my shop now. So I'm like, Lanny, I'll give you a key to the shop. You just spray whatever
come up there and do it.
Yeah, he's got a good spray booth up there that's perfect for that. And I'm just I'm hacking it, and with the garage door open and a box fan.
Which is funny because when I first started hanging out with Mike and the bird, it's time to fly the bird. You got the seasons in and especially when it get towards the end, I'm going. Every chance you get, right?
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's funny because like guys like us who say you have to, but there are people like It's a little cold today. I don't think I'm going to go.
Like Judge Judy's on. I'll just go watch Judge Judy.
I mean, do you ever get? I mean, unless it's too cold for the bird, but for you personally, you probably never go.
Well, you have a devotion to. I mean, basically, it's.
I mean, it's a little different, and then because you kind of owe it to the bird to get out.
It's a live creature we're talking about.
So even if you're sick or you don't feel well or whatever, you gotta go.
Yeah.
So you have to.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, you want to too. I mean,
you
see how addictive it is. I mean, it's gonna be like these guys building guitars.
Yeah.
But
it is. I think that's a good way to describe it. Is that these things do become addictive.
Oh no, I could leave it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Not.
I mean, it's just one of those things. About chicks. I think building guitars and stuff, or any hobby that I guess you're super passionate about it. I mean, it just becomes what you do.
Yeah.
So it's just who you are. That's what you do.
You can't imagine not doing it.
No, I mean, what do you? Yeah.
Yeah,
I've definitely geared myself towards doing it for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, part of the reason why I own several motorcycles is because if one's broke down, I have something to ride. I mean, I really do. It's my little black bike sits in the back of the garage, and I take it out, maybe once a week. But just because all else fails, it's my backup to my backup, which it came in handy this spring, and it was a nice day, and it was a Sunday, and one had a flat tire, and the other one had carburetor problems, and fired it up and got to ride. And I would have been very disappointed if on a nice day I didn't get to go. And it's a little bit different because you're just sitting there riding, but the passion for wanting to do it, and the idea of I can't imagine not doing it. It's but I like the idea of taking it to the next level and maybe building my own bikes, and I think that would be a hoot, So
it certainly would be fun. If you had the space to do fabrication and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's the space for.
Or even with motorcycles. Even with guitars, there's so many parts out there that you can build anything you want. You just got to find the pieces.
And I've seen people on YouTube in England that build them in apartments, and
isn't that crazy?
They call their friends over when they're done to help them carry it down the steps.
One of the guys I used to follow on the internet lived in Japan in a very small apartment, and he was making his first Les Paul copy when the earthquakes were happening.
Oh wow!
So he was using the earthquakes as a time to hammer into the guitar to chisel some stuff away. So nobody would notice. He was like, the earthquakes worked out perfect.
Oh, that's
obviously not for the nuclear power plant, but for his guitar, it was great.
And that's funny.
Small. And he did everything with hand tools, old school style, because he couldn't make noise. And then when it came to finishing, I think he ended up using like tung oils or something like that, because no fumes.
Right.
So you just got to figure out different ways to do everything.
Well, I used to live in Massachusetts, and I had a little apartment bedroom, and I built a couple art shop mandolins in the back apartment, and did the same thing, to make sure the landlady left, and you go back there and you run routers or whatever you could
real quick, right? Make sure everything's cleaned up and pushed back into the little table before you're done for the evening or whatever.
Exactly. When we left there was probably an inch of sawdust on the ceiling of that room.
Well, and that is, when you have that passion that runs that deep, you just figure it out one way or the other. There's no making excuses of, and I think, and not to be overly critical of other people, but sometimes I think, I get that that's an excuse for not doing it, but really it's not. There's, you can wait all day for things to be optimal for just about anything you want to do, but at the end of the day, either you do it or you don't. Forget who it was. I want to say it was maybe even a comedian that said, people say, "Oh, I always wanted to play guitar," and they're like, "No, you didn't always want to play guitar. You always wish that you were born knowing how to play guitar. Because if you only wanted to, you would have. Did you ever take a lesson? Did you ever buy a guitar? Did you invest the thousands of hours it takes to be good? Because if you really wanted to,
you would have did it.
You would have did it. But So I think that I kind of try to keep that in mind, that these things they require effort, and that for me, I think embracing the effort is what helps me be able to take on different things, is that I enjoy the process of getting there. And if I was too good at any one thing, which is no risk of happening, it would lose the element of fun. I think anything that came a little bit too easy, I'd probably get bored of it quickly. So I like those things that I suck at first, and the learning curve.
It's the challenge. You challenge yourself as you do anything. That's what it's always been about for me. How can I do this to another higher level?
Yeah.
Okay, I've mastered this particular aspect of what I'm doing, but how can I now take it to another higher level that's a little bit more difficult to do, but you're learning a little bit more, and it's that much cooler when you're done.
Because you probably could have stopped at a certain basic style of guitar, and I got this mastered, I can make 50 of these easy, and just stick it at making the same one over and over again, and getting it down to where it's almost
I'd be bored to death.
Then you're just becoming robotic at that point.
There's no creativity there. It's way more fun whenever somebody brings you a challenge.
Right. Yeah. to build a mountain that you have to climb and to seek it out. Yeah. Mike, any other questions?
I want Corey to tell us about his Wheeling Nailers guitar.
Yes.
Okay, so for the Wheeling Nailers, I'm going to be building the Nailers logo with nails, with a hockey stick looking headstock. I actually they gave me a stick from the Thunderbirds. I'm going to incorporate it into the instrument in some way, shape, or form. I'm going to give it to the Boosters organization, and they're going to auction it off hopefully this fall. And we're going to donate all the money from it for cancer research. I haven't decided which level of cancer research yet, whether it be breast cancer or it'll be pediatrics. It will be some type of cancer research when this instrument's finished. Nice. It'd be kind of a unique instrument. So I'm going to actually have the whole team sign it, and then I'll spray clear over it so that it'll be signed by the whole team this year as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, Lanny, any final thoughts or anything on guitar making and
No, I don't. Well, I mean, my personal credo is talk minus action equals nothing.
Yeah.
So, don't just talk about it. Don't make endless lists. Actually, whatever hobby it is you're embracing, just take the steps. Do what it takes to actually start getting into what you possibly could love for the rest of your life.
I think that is really important advice, that if there's something that you kind of feel like you might want to try doing, don't make it theoretical. Get out there and try, and don't be afraid to fail. And like, I think
failure is the biggest teacher. It's your best teacher most of the time. I
forget which one of you guys said, well, you tried it, and even just to say that you didn't like it, at least there's to know that, well, I got that out of my system. I don't. There's a real benefit in that, because that's one of them things that you can knock off the list that allows you to focus on the next thing. And I think that even if you do find that thing and you try and you decide that you don't like it, that idea of moving forward and trying new things and to taking it from the theoretical, or I wish I did stage, and actually, being bold and putting it into action. And I know even like the podcast isn't rocket science, but I thought about it for a year, and I thought, man, I'd kind of like to do a podcast. And then finally one day I'm just like, well, what's stopping you? It's,
You've been rolling with this thing for a while, and I've listened to several of them.
Thanks, man. I think this is going to be, I think we're close to 60. I don't know. I haven't kept track. That's insane. I thought maybe I'd do 10, 15 a year. And so April Fool's was the release of the first one. So it's only been out a little over a year. And so...
the only other thing that I would want to add is, if you want to see pictures of what I'm doing...
Yeah, absolutely.
You can look at #Oland Guitars.
Okay.
OLAND Guitars. So you can follow hashtags now on Instagram. So and that's where I post just my guitar stuff.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, my stuff I just have on Facebook right now. I took my website down, just Corey Eller. Either search that or YouTube. Corey Eller Guitars. Willow Tree Stringed Instruments is actually the name of my company. It'll come up on either if you search for it. Hopefully get a website back up again sometime soon.
Nice. And I know we were I kind of was leading into a wrap up, but that did remind me of something. I want to talk about YouTube for a second, because you were even saying when we all went to dinner a couple weeks ago about wanting to start a YouTube channel and to be able to teach people how to do different things. And I think that's I think most people are kind of clued into the fact that you can learn a lot on YouTube, and we even alluded to it earlier. But you want to kind of explain the idea?
Yeah, kind of what I want to do is I'm on YouTube 24/7, 365. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great resource for anything you want. I mean, I look at astrophysics, telescope making. I have a broad interest. What I would like to do is get a channel out there that could explain step-by-step guitar making, which there's lots that do, but I want to take it to a different level. I want to make it so that the steps will be clear and kind of take it to a lower level, where if you've never done it before or don't even have any clue, I want you to be able to build an instrument from scratch. I just think it'd be interesting to do it more in depth than anybody else is doing it.
So maybe apply the same level of quality that you do to your guitars to a video about how to make guitars.
Exactly. You know, it would take a lot of footage to build a complete instrument the way I want to do it.
Yeah.
But I think if I commit myself to that, I think that it would really help out a lot of people that want to do this.
Sure.
My thing has always been, if somebody else has done it, you can do it.
Yeah.
And you know, there's no reason you can't. And you know, even I want to get in depth with the CNC operation. There's not a lot of good information on YouTube about how to program a CNC specifically for guitar makers. There's hardly anything on there on inlay whatsoever, and there's a couple tricks that I learned that would make life easy for people. And even the design aspect, there's things you can do. You can take existing 3D models and extrude DXF files and layer them over top of what you're doing, and you could easily design a guitar in an hour and cut it on the CNC machine. But you know, unless you know how to do these things, it's going to take you forever.
Yeah. And
I think I could really help a lot of people.
Jump-started that the learning process of the trial and error.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that YouTube is the university of the future, and I think for a lot of people, I know that whether it's working on the car, what little work I do try to do on the bike, or what, as far as a handyman, how to install a screen door, whatever it is, if there's anything I'm questioning how to do, I can go on YouTube and look at a video, and not only look at one, but watch, you know, like my brother teaches a vocational school, and we had this interesting discussion about if you go to learn how to do body work on a car, you're going to have that guy's methods and his preferred way of doing something, but you can go on YouTube and see 7 different people how they do the exact same thing,
right,
and learn a little bit from each, and also kind of learn what not to do from each of them. And I love the guys that make mistakes.
Yeah, to show you their mistakes, because that's really important. For me, YouTube was essential before I met Corey. You know, because reading books and reading stuff on the internet, it only takes you so far, and and you can actually on YouTube you can see somebody physically do it before you physically do it. Before you get that muscle memory of actually doing a job.
Sure. And the shortcuts that you can learn from somebody that's that are actually the easier way to do something that's complicated.
Yeah.
I do body work on cars, and there's a thing where you put the Bondo on and you smear it on, and you have to shave it down and everything. Well, I saw somebody they put it on, they just slapped it on, and then they took a plastic bag and put it over it and used their hand to mold it, so there was much less sanding. And they got it almost exactly in the shape, so there were no high spots or anything. I mean, there was a little bit, but for the most part, they used that bag to get
smooth it out, right?
To fit this very complex contour, and so they didn't have to shave it down and sand everything out. Why did I think of that 20 years ago when I was sitting there sanding because I applied too much product, and so you can learn from some of the best and worst people in the business, because sometimes you watch something and you go, wow, that's exactly how I don't want to do it. Look at all that,
Absolutely.
Yeah. And even just the fact that, oh, that's not something I want to try to do. I was thinking about redoing my kitchen countertops, and there's some videos on how to do foam marble and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I saw a couple people do it, and like, they're really good, and I saw some people really screw it up, and I'm like, it's not as easy as it looks.
It's like the Etsy fails.
Right. I mean, I still may take a shot at it, but I'm going to aim my expectations a little low. I mean, I always do. But well, fellas, this has been a great conversation, and I think it's awesome to know that you guys are doing this kind of work right here where we live, and I think the High Valley, and maybe it's not that much different than any other place in the United States, but that there's people doing really cool, exceptionally high-level things right here in our backyard. And so I'm glad that you guys came on so that people could learn more about it. And thank Mike for co-hosting.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
This a great forum. Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Second time at the Boles residence.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Last time we were at this table, we were talking about Bigfoot.
And
UFOs, and actually, this exact pairing of people, I think we could probably do another podcast.
Yeah, we started getting off on that when we were at dinner the other night.
Yeah. I thought maybe we'd get into it tonight, but there was so much to talk about the art of Luthering. Luthering, is it?
Luthery?
Yeah. Luthery.
Or I humbly just call myself a guitar builder.
Yeah, guitar building. Yeah, let's not get all fancy here. It's a podcast. It's a James Wodarcyk podcast. This isn't Joe Rogan. All right, guys. Well, hey, thanks again for being on, and everybody, thank you for listening and supporting the podcast, and support what these guys and other people around here are doing. And until the next time, see ya.
Time to